So Zuzanna is the Director of Corporate Strategy and External Innovation at Lilly & Co. Previously, she co-founded and was the CEO of Sixfold Bioscience, a Y Combinator and venture-backed biotechnology company. Before that, she completed her PhD and postdoc in neuroscience at Cambridge University. So thanks a lot for joining us, and the screen is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you for the invitation. Let me just quickly share my screen with you. How is that working for everyone?
Good. It's still not in full screen yet, so we can see the slide, but not in full screen yet.
I don't know why that is. Is this working now?
It's still not in full screen. Yeah, if you press play on the slideshow, yeah, now it works. Thanks.
So I wanted to talk to you about nucleic acid therapies, and in particular delivery systems for nucleic acid therapies, a little bit around the most recent advancements and remaining challenges. This is going to be a very high-level overview and a relatively brief presentation. I'm hoping that we can leave a little bit more time for questions and answers. So I think 2020 has been a very exciting year for many nucleic acid therapeutics. It's really, you know, COVID has not been, he's obviously created a very difficult situation for the economies, for the world, for the people around the world. But in terms of nucleic acid therapeutics, it's really helped to bring them to the spotlight. 2020 was a big year for CRISPR, for sure. The discoveries of new Cas proteins, use of CRISPR technology to study and develop diagnostic tests for COVID-19, and the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for Doudna for Doudna and her colleague. This past year has brought many results from clinical trials using CRISPR technology. We're talking here not only about using CRISPR in ex vivo therapies, but also first in vivo therapy from Aditas Medicine, and start of many trials across different diseases. In terms of mRNA, messenger RNA therapeutics, again, I think COVID catapulted mRNA vaccines to the spotlight, with first approvals from Moderna and BioNTech. CureVac, the third, probably most famous mRNA-focused company, has their COVID vaccine about to be approved. mRNA is not obviously just around COVID vaccines, but also in use for cancer vaccines, protein replacement therapies. A lot of progress, a lot of funding going into mRNA from 2020. In terms of other RNA-based therapeutics, we have antisense oligos and siRNA therapies, both relying on the process of RNA interference. This class has been in development for much longer than CRISPR and mRNA in the clinic. This initial excitement around RNAi, including as the Science's breakthrough of the year in 2002, and the Nobel Prize for Physiology and Medicine for Mello, this was 2006. The initial excitement was relatively short-lived. Late 2000s, early 2010s, they saw several major pharma players, including Roche, Novartis, Merck, Pfizer, scale back and sell off their RNAi portfolios, given how slow the progress was back then. But with the first, a couple of pharmas persevered, a couple of biotechs persevered, including Alnylam, as a leader in the field. And the much-awaited first FDA approval of Alnylam's patisiran in 2018 validated that approach and boosted, I would say, I would argue, the wider space. So not just RNAi, but the wider RNA therapeutics. As of first quarter 2021, we have almost 3,500 gene, cell, and RNA therapies in development, ranging from preclinical through pre-registration. 20% of those are RNA therapies RNA therapies. So that would include mRNA, antisense oligos, and siRNAs. Gene therapy constitutes, including CRISPR, constitutes over 50%. If we just look at the approved therapies globally for clinical use, cell therapies, including CAR-Ts mostly, they lead with 53 therapies on the market. RNA therapeutics, there's 16 approved to date. And I just wanted to bring your attention to a couple that are doing very well, bringing needed treatments to patients in diseases like SMA, so spinal muscular atrophy, where Spinraza, so nusinersen, this is an ASO from Ionis, has been approved since 2016, doing very, very well commercially, great clinical results. We, of course, have the first approved siRNA therapy from Alnylam on Patro. This is something to follow. This one relied still on lipid nanoparticles as a delivery mechanism. And then from Alnylam, another siRNA, the second one approved, givosiran, with an improved delivery system relying on GalNAcs. We'll dive into those different types of deliveries in a second. And then as a third one, just something for you guys to, I think, to follow and keep in mind, very exciting progress within cardiovascular diseases with inclisiran, again from Alnylam, a very large deal with Novartis. This is on the market, called Leqvio. These are some of the exciting ASOs and siRNAs already on the market. In terms of mRNAs, we of course have Comirnaty from BioNTech and Pfizer, and the Moderna vaccine as well, with the Pfizer vaccine on track of bringing 20 billion in revenue in 1 year sales. In terms of just clinical activity, as you can see for RNA therapies, as you can see, since 2004, there's been a steady increase in the total number of therapies. 2015 really accelerated that progress even further. In 2020, we have already over 500 therapies in development. I think something worth noting here is that the pipelines are still not very mature, with the majority of this work still in preclinical stage. Sorry, I should have noted that the clinical activity increased much after 2015. The preclinical and clinical activity has been on a steady upward trend since 2004. So a slight correction there. The pipelines are not very mature. So as you can see in red, the phase 3 trials are still just a tiny proportion of the clinical activity. And just as a reminder here, at the bottom, you can see how the RNA therapies are split across RNAi, ASO, and mRNA, with RNAi, so short interfering RNAs, being the largest group. This trend of renewed interest in siRNAs post 2016, when we saw major breakthroughs from Alnylam in late stage clinical activity. This interest is really reflected in the number of $1 billion plus US dollars collaborations and licensing deals since during the same period, so from 2016 to 2020. Here you can just see a couple of deals and the biggest players in the space. We're now spotlighting on siRNAs within the wide RNA space. So a couple of companies that lead in this in terms of the siRNA platforms. We have Alnylam, we have Arrowhead, and Dicerna, which are probably the largest three players. A company, a biotech worth noting and worth having on the radar across the European space is also Silence Therapeutics. So this is just a little bit about the licensing deals. We've also seen a large M&A activity, and Novartis is one of the players that has been doing quite a few acquisitions, large and small. I suppose the deal worth noting from Novartis is the almost 10 billion acquisition of the medicine company for that molecule in inclisiran that I noted on at the beginning of the presentation. In terms of where the siRNAs are being targeted to, they are being targeted to diseases where they can be delivered successfully. And this is mostly the liver, the eye, and the muscles. So everywhere where you can deliver siRNA therapeutics, where you can locally administer them, that would be eye and muscles, or where lipid nanoparticles, which are the first delivery systems used, where they naturally accumulate. Wider application of nucleic acid therapeutics, including RNAi, that will really depend on how effective our delivery of these drugs into the target tissues, into the target cells, and the specific compartments within the cells is. Why that's the case, just very briefly, naked nucleic acids are quickly degraded by enzymes in the blood. They can evoke immune response. They tend to be too large, especially mRNAs, and negatively charged to passively cross the cell and other biological membranes. So they in vivo application, again, it really depends on the vectors that are capable of transporting them to the desired location. They need to be, they need to overcome a range of biological membranes. Just broadly speaking, vehicles for delivery of nucleic acid therapeutics, they can be divided into viral and non-viral vectors, with the viral vectors primarily focused on the use of lentiviruses. They have low cytotoxicity, integration, they integrate into the genomes, and they show long-term expression, which has made them the vector of choice for some of the cell therapies, especially so CAR T cancer therapies. We also have within the viral vectors, we have AAVs, adeno-associated viruses. With them, the structural simplicity, the broad applicability, and relatively good tolerability. All those characteristics, they propelled them to be the overall most widely used platform for gene therapies. They are approved for 2, in particular, going back to Glybera from Unicure, and AAV2 that underlies and forms part of Spark Therapeutics Luxturna. In the non-viral space, and now we'll be coming back to the siRNA therapeutics here. In the non-viral space, we have 2 broad categories, mostly encapsulation approaches. So that would be the lipid nanoparticles and polymeric nanoparticles that you can see here on this chart. And we also have some emerging approaches around the use of exosomes. The most probably conceptually straightforward approach relies on different conjugation methods, and the GalNAc conjugates that are very good at delivering siRNAs to liver cells. They are the predominantly used method for delivery still in clinical trials. As you can see here, over almost 50% of clinical trials between 2004 and 2020 have relied on GalNAcs. In terms of just the delivery, there's delivery companies that push the different, and I'm really sorry for the low resolution on this chart. In terms of some of the companies that push the different delivery approaches, we have viral-focused companies like Oxford Biomedica, with partnerships with quite a few large cap farmers, Novartis, BMS, and Sanofi. Within the non-viral, again, around encapsulation, we have lipid nanoparticles, when some of the major players include Arctus. We also have slightly more emerging players with pushing polymeric nanoparticles. That would be Gene Edit, one of the companies that really stands out. And within exosomes, a couple of players, with Evox Therapeutics probably to date being the largest player with deals including Takeda and my company Eli Lilly. Exosomes are showing promise, in particular with delivery into the CNS. And then we have the conjugation methods. We talked about them a little bit. Different ones, GalNAc being the most established. Companies like Dicerna, Alnylam have their own GalNAc platforms. Antibody conjugates with avidity, again, that is something that Eli Lilly is interested in for targeting, improved targeting of muscles. And then even though peptide conjugates, they've been in development for a very long time, there's not been any approvals to date. Some early clinical, mostly preclinical, but early clinical activity. And here a company to follow is probably one out of Oxford, PepGene, with some very nice studies. I think I just wanted, given my experience across startups, I just wanted to highlight to you a couple of the start of the funding activity in this space across gene cell and RNA therapies. It is there's been significant increase. So if we just look at the first quarter of 21, we've seen almost twice as many deals in terms of Series A, and twice as big financing in terms of volume of the deals compared to previous year. So that just gives you, again, a different look or a different perspective into how much interest there is in the space from the investor perspective. And a couple of things that I think I follow and I find very interesting, a couple of companies with very new approaches in the space that they're exciting, and I would want to bring your attention to them. Organized therapeutics, this is circular RNA therapies. I think very, very exciting new approach, which could be applied to many oncology and autoimmune diseases. We also have cellular gene therapeutics, non-viral gene therapies using mammalian-derived enzymes. This is mostly around applying RNA, DNA technology to cardiovascular disorders and insomnia. This is around the in vivo delivery, and I think a very exciting companies with a lot to show in the coming years. So keep those in mind if you're interested in the space. This was just a very, very high level overview of the activity across gene, cell, and RNA therapies, looking at the companies and the funding and the different delivery mechanisms. I threw some high level information at you, but I'm hoping that we can move to any questions that you have. And it can be, it can be anything around the therapies. If you're interested in startups or the industry side of research, please just I'm ready for the questions.
Thank you, Zuzanna, for the really interesting talk. We don't have any questions in the chat at the moment or in the Q&A, but please go ahead and write them. I just have one general question to you regarding doing this kind of research in industry versus in academia. Since before you were in academia, I don't know if you also work with RNA therapeutic kind of work, but do you see any big differences there in how this kind of research is done?
Yes, so I think academic research, and I think what is very exciting about academic research and why academic research is very important is that you can really you can go after very bold ideas, blue sky research. That doesn't have to depend and rely heavily on, already tested or, kind of ideas, applied ideas. You can go and discover very new things. Sometimes things will work, sometimes they will not work. But there's fewer constraints. And so some of the very, very good new transformational technologies, they will be coming from academic environment. Startups and it's startup research that is typically relies on taking slightly more matured and applied ideas, very often from an academic environment. But really streamlining the research towards something that can be translated and applied. Within the pharma, the activity is slightly different. You know, here we are less concerned with how good something sounds, how much money you can raise for the research. We're more concerned with things that can really, really work for patients. And so for us to take something forward and into our preclinical pipelines and then further clinical development, you know, there's very high bars that the technologies need to pass in terms of their potential to be really, really applied in vivo and then in patients. There's probably slightly less scope for blue sky research, but what we do in the industry, we rely on the best results from the academic and biotech environment, and we take you know, whatever has been already shown to be effective and safe.